the conclusion of the SEC on CBS doubleheader, the conclusion of the CBS college football tripleheader, that would be Alabama's win against LSU in Tuscaloosa. Now, we'll be getting to, rankings impact for both of these teams later on in tomorrow's top 25 today. But, Tom, I'll throw this to you first. Jalen Milroe has truly a historic performance. The 4 rushing touchdowns, just awesome. What impressed you the most out of Alabama's win here against the Tigers?
Well, it certainly wasn't the defense, Chip.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, like Jalen Milroe obviously had an incredible game. He threw for 219. He rushed for 155, had the 4 touchdowns. And I think we saw too, I mean, it really opened up the rest of their run game. Like he had the majority of the yards, but Jace McClellan ran the ball well. Roy Dale Williams ran the ball well. This was like a tennis match, and it was whoever broke serve first was going to win. And you had the Jaden Daniels interception, which was tipped and allowed Alabama to go up 2 scores. And then Jaden Daniels, of course, gets knocked out of the game. And at that point, it was a wrap at that point. Like you thought maybe they'd be able to come back with Jaden in there, but once he was gone, the game felt over. I know I moved it to a secondary screen and moved Washington USC to the primary, but it was a really fun and entertaining game. And it really just kind of went how I expected it to. I thought Alabama was going to win, and I thought there were going to be a lot of points because I had trust in Alabama to be able to get more stops than I did LSU, and that's really how it played out.
Honestly, I thought Bama was the more physical team. When Bama was moving the ball on offense, it looked easier. It felt like LSU was making exceptional plays, and this played out basically how I expected the game to play out. LSU took 4 corners in the transfer portal. That tells me you think your corners suck. LSU played its defense to protect its corners. Bama really didn't hit very many of those deep shots down the field. Right. But every time CBS would show the zoomed out view, and you could see in the L22, they're playing off. They're trying to light box Alabama. They're trying to really just, minimal personnel up front to protect that secondary. That's why I bet Alabama in this game. I was like, there's no way that these LSU freshman corners are ready for this moment. And they weren't. And although the freshman corners weren't exposed like crazy, I think that what really was exposed was how LSU had to play its defense to protect them, right? Like, and they did get exposed a couple times in some of the run fit stuff. The way Bama blocked it up, they really forced some of those young guys to be in the fit and actually be the guy that's got to tackle a really dynamic athlete in Jalen Milroe. And look, Bama's a better team than LSU if LSU doesn't have Mekhi Wingo and all 4 of the corners they took in the portal. I think they're probably better anyway, but they're definitely better without those guys in there. And this played out like I thought. Bama was going to make LSU earn everything on offense. They contested routes. Neighbors had a couple key drops like we talked about in big game breakdown, right? Hey, he's really good to get open, but if you can cover him, he will not catch the football reliably. And what do you have? 3 drops tonight in tight-ish coverage?
At least
that
2.
hurt LSU. Like Bama said, hey, we're going to put hands on you. And they did.
Whether it's Arnold, McKinstry, Moore, like you've got dudes there that are going to be really physical and are going to make you make tough catches. You called on Brian Thomas to try to be the one who would maybe be able to step up there. They weren't able to get enough. I'm glad you mentioned Mekhi Wingo because there was one Roydale Williams run. I think it was like a 12, 16-yard run. It was just right up the middle. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that happens if Mekhi Wingo is there right now. But, credit to Tommy Rees and Alabama for being able to identify what needs to be exploited and being able to go get it done. On the defensive side, you mentioned it wasn't the defense that was impressive. Do you all think that there was at least some of the enough of Alabama's defense where you're not looking at the Crimson Tide and, we have to start having the conversation. They are undefeated in conference play. Their only loss is to Texas. They have a head-to-head win against Ole Miss. Like, we need to start gaming this thing out all the way to the end of the season. And we'll get to Georgia a little bit later on in the show. But, is this an Alabama team that coming out of this very, very big and important win, do you come out of it feeling any better or worse about where it stands compared to the class of the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs?
No, I don't think this is a statement of their defense as much as I feel like it's probably a result of the way they played. But Alabama only had 1 tackle for loss in the entire game. And I think that was mostly because they were trying to protect against the big play, and they didn't want to bring a ton of pressure to give Jaden Daniels even more running space.
Don't put bodies in the backfield when Daniels can be 40 yards the other way.
By the way, it was super effective. Jaden rushed for 163 yards, but it's just like I don't think it was a bad defensive game, but I certainly don't think it was a great defensive game for Alabama. And the important thing to take away here is Jalen Milroe had an incredible game, but does Jalen Milroe do that against Georgia? Because this is something that everybody's been doing against LSU. Like LSU's defense has been duty for the most part all season long, and everybody that goes against it is scoring a bunch of points and putting up a bunch of yards. So I don't know if there's a ton to take away from this one if you're Alabama, other than it did what good teams are supposed to do. It went out there and took care of its business. It got the win, and now it's going to move on. I still think, even though we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, and that Georgia didn't look incredible today, I still think Georgia's a better team.
I'm not upgrading Alabama at all after this win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've seen teams do this. Florida State was 45-17 on the opening weekend, right? That's basically what score was tonight, plus another score. They basically played the same game. I think LSU is a really good team. I think Bama's a better team, especially with the guys LSU had out. What did Bama do tonight that translates against Georgia?
Halftime adjustments. That's sure. So I have not been able to actually break it down, as you all know, every single rinse, repeat, multitasking a lot during the second half of this late window. But the fact that you are able to limit, and Jaden Daniels is knocked out again for the final 4 minutes of that game, last possession and a half, I guess, for the Tigers. You got to take that into consideration. But I kind of think that when you are in a track meet, when you are in a tennis match, if you hold your opponent to just one score in the second half, then you've done enough. You've come up with the plays that you need to do to be able to take a high scoring back and forth affair. I mean, they did not finish the first half well. Whatever adjustments were made. And again, I haven't broken down to understand schematically what they might've been. It sure seems like it worked out in the second half.
To further your question, you did ask, does it change your opinion about where Alabama is in the SEC compared to Georgia? And if I had not watched the Georgia-Missouri game, I might just be a flat no. But maybe there are some things, and we'll get to it, that you could do against Georgia, right? There are some weaknesses there. Georgia's not probably on the level that it was the last 2 years. I think it's still either the best or second best team in the country. But if Georgia played a C- game in the SEC championship and Bama played its A game, could Bama win? I think they could. I don't think Georgia is so historically dominant that it is just a 100% foregone conclusion.
There's a dumbed down everybody sucks Saturday take. I don't think that everybody sucks, but I do think that what we are witnessing that would lead you to that is just the shrinking of the gap. That the top teams just continue to look a little bit closer to the 10th best team. And that makes you feel like everybody sucks, even if the teams at the top are still very, very good at what they do. Because, whether it is Georgia getting caught close, whether it is Oklahoma getting knocked off, you've got Florida State gets a little bit of a slow start. Ohio State has its hands full with Rutgers. It just kind of felt like all these teams that we were looking at to just go and just put hands on people and just got caught in a bunch of fist fights, which is cool. I mean, it's college football in November.
More fun that way.
yeah, without a doubt. So it wasn't a total everybody sucks Saturday. Leading into the game, I was wondering if Alabama blew out LSU, I was like, we're going to come out of this day saying the only team that's good in college football is the Alabama Crimson Tide. But that defense, as you mentioned, lit up a little bit by Jaden Daniels. Anything else from this game? We got a lot to get to, so I feel like we don't need to linger. But it is the game that just finished 30 minutes ago.
Daniels Heisman is over, I assume.
Yes. That's why I wrote the story for Friday.
Yeah.
Hey, isn't this a cool storyline? I'm like, yeah, let's write it right now.
Does he still get invited to New York?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he still has an outside shot to win it if he keeps playing extremely well and Penix and Washington lose a game and Michigan loses a game. I think he's still got a shot, but it's not a great one.
I think they're going to be playing a lot of games in front of our friend Cole Kublik, right? Because it's Florida and A&M left on the schedule. I think is there an FCS or like a lower level too? I think maybe.
You say Florida, A&M, and then they should have because they've already played Grambling.
Oh, okay.
There's got to be somebody else then.
No, they played. Didn't they just play Army a couple weeks ago? I think that was their typical.
No, they got
November
Grambling and
week.
Army. Soft strength of schedule. I'm
Somebody
sorry,
in the
LSU.
chat has to know who
It's
they
not
play.
your 3 losses that are going to keep you out of the playoff. It's the strength of schedule.
Oh, Georgia State. Okay, so he'll roast them. Georgia State's. God, it's sick that we know this. Georgia State's corners are not very good. Like the rest of the defense is actually not bad, but
They got torn up today. Madison worked them.
So, before we get to anything else, here's 20 minutes on New Mexico State.
The Yankees are good. Jarrett Kill, man.
I had
right.
some middle. That was so frustrating.
What'd you have?
God, I had some 3.5 and some 3 and some money line.
Tough.
Yeah.
Tough scene for
Aggies letting you down.
a tough scene for Bud Elliott. All right, let's go dealer's choice here. Apologies to Jordan that you got to keep track because initially I'd said USC